The PS3 might be regarded by many as the dark horse of the PlayStation console family, but by the end of its life cycle, the console had managed to accumulate an impressive library of excellent games nonetheless. Of course, a byproduct of that is the library also had a fair few games that ended up flying under the radar for a great many players, even if they were deserving of far greater attention and recognition. Here, we're going to talk about a few such PS3 titles that didn't grab the masses the way they should have. Enslaved: Odyssey to the West. Ever the masters of narrative-driven single-player experiences, back in 2010, Ninja Theory delivered Enslaved: Odyssey to the West, a game that many considered one of the studio's best works ever to this day. Sadly, the game ended up a commercial failure. Though acclaimed by many for its storytelling, characters, performances, and its take on the classic Chinese tale of Journey to the West, for whatever reason, it failed to attract a sizable audience. The Darkness. The Darkness isn't exactly a flop, having done well enough both critically and commercially to warrant a sequel, if nothing else. Many of its staunchest fans will tell you, however, that the single-player shooter deserved more attention. From its storytelling to its hyper-violent action, The Darkness managed to make a strong impression in more ways than one, even with all the polish issues and design flaws it undeniably had. Syndicate. Developed by Starbreeze Studios, just like the aforementioned The Darkness, Syndicate came at the tail end of the PS3 era, and, at the time, with lukewarm critical reception and dismal sales. It was deemed a major stumble for the developer and publisher EA. Many have argued, however, that Syndicate was a better game than its reception suggested, and I, for one, agree. Gorgeous, slick, fun to play, and unafraid to chart its own path in a saturated genre, Syndicate deserved more than the quick and unceremonious death it had to endure. Silent Hill Downpour. Admittedly, Silent Hill Downpour is a deeply flawed game in more ways than one, and no, it doesn't come anywhere close to living up to the series' highest highs. It is not, however, devoid of redeeming qualities, which is often the picture that ends up being painted with this game. Yes, it was a letdown in several rather important areas, but in terms of its storytelling, setting, and atmosphere, which some may argue should always be priorities in a Silent Hill game, Downpour deserves a lot of praise. Siren: Blood Curse. Speaking of flawed horror titles on the PS3, Project Siren's Siren: Blood Curse is another title that fits that description, though it is probably far less flawed than something like Silent Hill Downpour. In fact, Blood Curse is more than a competent reimagining of the original Siren, touting genuine scares, palpable atmosphere, and engaging mechanics. It sadly came out at a time when pure survival horror just couldn't find any real footing in the market. Bionic Commando. 2009 Bionic Commando semi-reboot has found its way into folklore with how significantly it failed from a commercial perspective upon its release. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it was a perfect game that got unfairly criticized. No, Bionic Commando had its fair share of flaws, but it also was undeniably fun. The story was entertaining in its way, and it looked great for its time. And it's hard to shake the feeling that if it had sold better, the developer could maybe have delivered a significantly improved sequel. Dead Nation. Dead Nation is maybe not one of Housemarque's instant classics, especially with the likes of Returnal, Resogun, and Next Machine to compete against. It is, however, an absolute blast of zombie-slaying shoot-'em-up nonetheless, and one that, like all Housemarque games, should have had more attention than it got back in the day. Moment-to-moment action in Housemarque titles never disappoints, so you can just imagine how fun Dead Nation made it to mow down waves of the undead. Motorstorm Apocalypse. We can go on forever about first-party titles on the PS3 that didn't do as well as they should have, but for now, let's just stick with Motorstorm Apocalypse. The gleefully over-the-top apocalyptic action racer was easily one of the best and only games of its kind on the PS3, especially on a scale that it was attempting things at, so it was a crying shame to see it bomb the way that it did. The fact that it was the last mainline console Motorstorm doesn't help matters. Fuel. From one apocalyptic racer to the next, Codemaster and Asobo Studios' Fuel obviously predated Motorstorm Apocalypse by a couple of years, but it sadly shared a similar fate. In fact, with lukewarm critical reception, its fate was arguably even worse. That said, with its sprawling open-world map and its excellently realized post-apocalyptic setting, Fuel's reputation has definitely seen something of a rehabilitation over the years. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.
Paz,
Snake,
can you hear me?
see, I can hear you.
Where are you?
I am not sure. I don't recognize it.
What about Coldman?
He just...
A little over a year after its original PSP launch, Peace Walker came to consoles, but even on PS3, it didn't make the sort of waves that a mainline number entry would have, which is frustrating because, in all but name, that's exactly what Peace Walker was. The stealth masterpiece is a pivotal and essential part of the Metal Gear saga. And if not for some bad marketing and commercially driven decisions to drop the 5 that was originally intended to be in its title, it maybe would have had the sort of recognition that it obviously deserved. Shadows of the Damned. Shadows of the Damned delivers a legitimately great third-person shooter. And yet, the game could never graduate past the classic stage of success. A remaster launched for modern hardware in 2024, but at least so far, there's been no indication that it did any better.
More darkness dead ahead.
Alien Isolation. History has been fair to Alien Isolation, which is now considered by many to be one of the best modern survival horror games out there, which it absolutely is. Back in the day, however, Alien Isolation just couldn't seem to accumulate anywhere close to the amount of wins it deserved. Bafflingly divisive critical reception and far lower interest in the horror genre in general than there is now meant the game just couldn't get the sort of traction one had hoped for. Thankfully, in the long run, it did well enough that a sequel is now in the works. So, all's well that ends well, I suppose. Alice: Madness Returns. Now, widely considered an underappreciated classic, Alice Madness Returns could sadly draw at best unenthusiastically positive reception from most at the time of its release. The action-adventure title consequently saw less than stellar sales, to say the least, all of which seems doubly frustrating in retrospect. Tight design, strong storytelling, and a visually arresting setting were just some of the game's many highlights. Remember Me. Remember Me is easily one of the most overlooked titles, though its fans will tell you that there's plenty about it that stands out. Remember Me has drawn high praise for its storytelling, setting, aesthetic, and more over the years, to the extent that the fact that the game never got a sequel continues to be a major point of disappointment for many. Puppeteer. Sony's now defunct first-party Japan studio was sadly no stranger to releasing acclaimed titles that would fail to meet commercial expectations, in spite of going on to become fan favorites. Puppeteer is a classic example of that. The charming platformer launched in 2013 for PS3, and many instantly took to its settings, its visuals, animations, mechanics, and more. But it failed to attract the sort of audience it undoubtedly deserved to, and the fact that it launched exclusively for PS3 a couple of months before the PS4's launch certainly didn't help matters. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.